Do warrant officers have to time retirement differently? Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and it finally happened. A couple months ago, I did some videos about optimizing the timing of retirement for officers and for non-commissioned officers. And it finally happened that a warrant officer reached out to me and said, "Hey, what about us?" Okay, well, if you think that I'm intimidated by senior NCOs, you have no idea how I feel about chief warrant officers. I mean, I have worked shoulder to shoulder with some world-class CW5s, and they are a different breed. Whether it's property accountability warrants just tirelessly grinding through files, or some maintenance warrant out there on an MSR fixing broken down vehicles, and don't even get me started about the special forces and aviators. They have a level of precision and professionalism that's tough for a guy like me to live up to. But I promised I was going to do this, so here we go. Remember that there's 5 factors that influence your pension: your years of service, a 2.5% multiplier, the average of your high 36 months of base pay, an annual COLA adjustment, and a partial one-time COLA adjustment. For now, I'm going to ignore the cost of living adjustments, but if you're interested in picking the best time to retire, watch this video. Now remember that your years of service has 2 impacts. First, it gets multiplied by that 2.5% multiplier. Plus, the longer you serve, the more your base pay goes up. So that causes your average 36 months of base pay to rise too. So here's where the first interesting thing for warrants starts to happen. Remember when we were looking at NCOs and Master Sergeants, E8s, their average 36 base pay, it grew by like 1 or 2% every year until they hit 29 years, and then there was a little bit of growth, but it completely stopped by 33 years of service. On the other hand, you've got Sergeant Majors, E9s, where their high 36 never stops growing. Even at 39 years, the E9s are getting that double effect of years of service and a higher base pay. Well, warrants follow a really similar pattern to NCOs. In fact, I'll show you something really neat in a second. CW5s are like Sergeant Majors in that their base pay never stops growing. CW4s are like Master Sergeants. They grow until 29 years of service and then trickle along until 33 years when they just plateau. CW3s plateau at 29 years. They don't have that slow growth up to 33 years. So, spoiler alert, the timing decisions for a CW5 are going to look a lot like the timing decisions of a Sergeant Major. And the timing decisions of a CW4 are going to look like a Master Sergeant. Personally, I think that's really cool. And that's because senior warrant officers are often like unicorns in units. They don't have a lot of peers in the unit to interact with. But if you're a warrant officer and you're looking for somebody who's up against a similar decision to you, you've got the senior NCOs. In fact, I'd say that they're a better approximation for a warrant officer than the officers are. Just as a side note, look how closely these curves match. It kind of seems to me like there's just a added bonus for being a warrant officer. Okay, so this brings us back to that comparison of lifetime pension based on years of service and your expected lifespan. Now look, a number of people have pointed out that this lifetime pension is kind of a weird metric to use because not many of us think about this in terms of, well, how much money am I going to receive before I die? But I argue that there is an important insight that comes out of this. It is really tempting to say that the longer you serve, the bigger your monthly pension paycheck gets. And that's true, but you have to ask, at what point are you trading away your life for just a little bit more money? And the big aha is that depends on how long you think you're going to live. I mean, think about it. If you knew you were going to pass away at 55, would you really work until you were 54? Probably not. I mean, I would trade a smaller pension for more retired time. All right, so let's start by looking at the CW3. If you figure you're only going to live to be 60 years old, it's probably best to hit 20 years of service and retire. If you think you're going to make it to like 70, 75, you might stay around to 29 years. Even if you thought you'd make it into your late 80s, if you're still a CW3 at like 33 years, it's probably time to go. A CW4 is fundamentally the same. Where things get interesting is with the CW5. It's still that if you're expecting a lifespan under 70 years, you probably don't want to hang around. But if you think you're going to live a long life, you might serve all the way to the end. Whatever you decide, there is a whole collection of different factors that you have to take into consideration, and they're going to be different for every family situation. If you have middle school kids, you might take a look at this video on high school stabilization to see how to plan that into your career.